All right, welcome back, everybody. Thanks for joining in. I'd like to say that for those of you who think you can sleep when you're dead, this podcast is for you because it's literally killing you. And with that, today we're going to talk about. We're still sticking with this recovery piece, and we're going to really kind of focus in on the sleep aspect of it. And yeah, we're gonna kind of go through the kind of sleep cycles and kind of talk a little bit of everything, and then next time we'll probably go into a little bit more in depth about everything. So with that, we kind of need to talk about, even though we're talking about sleep, we kind of need to give a little bit of background information and talk about events leading up to sleep. So mostly the kind of the daytime hours to really kind of get an understanding of how sleep works.
Yep.
So, Josh, what regulates, what kind of gives that sleepiness signal?
So the sleepiness signal comes from kind of this ticking clock that we have.
Yes.
So we've all heard of circadian rhythms. So first thing in the morning, that light pulse that we get kind of starts the clock counting down to allow us to become sleepy at a later time. Typically, it's around that 16-hour mark. But in addition to that, we also have this buildup of adenosine.
Yes.
And the adenosine buildup is what we call sleep pressure. And so that sleep pressure is what we feel whenever we're starting to kind of become a little drowsy and tired.
Yeah, so adenosine, how do we get adenosine? So adenosine comes from, if those who you're familiar, our biggest energy source is ATP.
Correct.
Adenosine triphosphate. So when ATP breaks down, most of the energy we burn is actually, during those daylight hours.
Correct.
So we're getting this buildup of adenosine, and that's kind of where this sleep pressure kind of comes from.
Right. So, the body is able to recycle the molecule whenever it breaks it down, but there is this kind of exhaust that builds up that gives us this sleep pressure.
Yeah, and interesting, adenosine and caffeine bind to the same receptor site in the brain. So, we all drink, if we ever drink caffeine to kind of help, fight that tiredness, it's literally we're just blocking the receptor site which adenosine binds to, but we're still burning energy. We're still building up adenosine. It's just not going anywhere. It's not able to attach to our brain essentially, and cause more drowsiness. But it's still building up. So whenever that caffeine does clear out, it's like you've ever experienced, like whenever the effects of caffeine have kind of worn off, and you've kind of done this multiple times, you get this kind of rush of tiredness. That's just because that adenosine now has this. It's like you have all this extra buildup, and now it's just filling in as quickly as possible.
Right. Yeah. It floods the system,
Yeah.
And then it kind of hits you like a ton of bricks, right?
Yes. So we've got our circadian rhythm. We got this internal clock, and one thing also kind of mentioned, I think we had talked about before, is we don't quite run on this 24-hour a day cycle. It's slightly shorter than that. But you mentioned, like, the first thing in the morning is we get this light pulse, and maybe you want to talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so the SCN, the suprachiasmatic nucleus, is kind of our master clock. And so you don't really have to know anything about that. But basically, whenever light comes in through the eye, that's like the first thing that it goes to. And then from there, it tells everything else what to do. So if we don't have the clock kind of recalibrated every morning, there can be what's kind of like this drift in timing. And so instead of chemicals being released or hormones being released, which we'll definitely get into here, the hormones will get released either minutes behind or potentially hours behind, which then just kind of has a ripple effect into either delaying or shifting our kind of frame of reference, if you will, to where everything's kind of like pushed off. And then the consequence of that is, if something's supposed to be released, say at 10 p.m., but it's now being released at, midnight. And then the things that are supposed to be released at midnight, it like just keeps, and so you might even miss out on certain, or the amount of hormone release would just be less because it's now trying to move on to the next phase, and you've just kind of jumbled everything up.
Yeah. So we got this buildup of adenosine and causes this drowsiness. And then as light starts to decrease, assuming we have our clocks set right, we then start to see melatonin rises.
Yeah, so melatonin and light are kind of opposites, if you will. But the interesting little fun fact, and we'll definitely talk about this on a different episode, but melatonin is really made by light. You need
Yes.
that during the day so that it can be released at the right time. Um, the one thing that, so we have pineal melatonin and then we have mitochondrial melatonin. So pineal is only 5%. So that's what everyone talks about, the pineal release. But 95% of it's actually coming from the mitochondria. So again, we'll get into that at a later date. But the key is if we get the right signal in the morning, we'll have the melatonin being made so that it can be released at night. But if we don't get that daylight signal, we're not going to have that increase of melatonin like we would expect. And so, again, that might delay us becoming drowsy when we would want to go to sleep, that sort of thing. So that might push us into wanting to go to bed later.
Yeah, so then also the other things we're also trying to see later on in the evening time as we're approaching bedtime is body temperature is going to drop off.
Right. So again, there's kind of this inverse relationship. So whenever we see that cortisol spike first thing in the morning, that's kind of that wake up stimulus, if you will. Well, as we're winding down, cortisol should be dropping. And as cortisol drops, temperature should kind of follow as well.
So for those who don't know, cortisol is kind of it kind of helps regulate energy. It helps mobilize energy. So it kind of essentially gets us going.
Yeah, so we think of cortisol from stress, but we actually need cortisol just to function. So like there's a normal aspect of it, and then there's you have too much in too many places and it becomes inflammation. So that's a separate fact. But in the normal waking and sleep cycle, there's going to be this diurnal fluctuation of the release.
Yeah. So body temperature is going down. We also then see cortisol levels go down.
Yep.
Yeah, and then so maybe like a few kind of like disruptors and things to kind of avoid before bedtime. Obvious, probably one of the biggest thing is light.
Yeah, so light is what wakes us up, but if we're getting the wrong light stimulus, that can kind of continue that disruption. So again, a little quick fact. So normal like lights are kind of programmed around that, depending, but around that 5,000 Kelvin range. And again, that's kind of the same thing that you would get if you went out during midday. So if you've got your lights on and you've got just a normal LED light, obviously there's a range, but if you get the daylight bulb, then it's programming your brain to see daylight. So if it's 7 o'clock at night and you're trying to wind down, but the light signature is saying it's noon, it's a mismatch, right? So
Yes.
TV screens are like 5,500, phone screens are 5,500 if you don't have a filter. So again, if you're watching TV at night, it's going to give you this signal that it's daylight or midday. And it's, again, this mismatch of like, I'm supposed to be winding down, but my brain's getting the signal that it's noon. So again, you do that too much, too often, and then you wonder why your sleep's disrupted.
And so that would be that 5,500 range. That's right around. That's what we call this blue, like more that blue light.
Yeah. So light temperature is not the same as the nanometers of light.
Yes.
And again, that's maybe too much for this discussion. But blue is a very narrow range, and then the temperature range is separate from that. But yes, we're referring to that blue, that narrow blue zone.
And you mentioned this is pretty. It's like the way your body interprets I think it was blue light and stress. It's the exact same thing.
Correct. So stress goes through your, kind of adrenal system and the sympathetic nervous system the same way, whether it be you had an argument with your significant other, whether you had a stressful workout, you were in traffic, or were under this bombardment of blue light. The body interprets it relatively the same. And you could argue that the intensity might be a little different. So, if you imagine blue light, it's not this intense stressor, but it's happening all the time. So it's this like chronic drip of stressing. Whereas you have a fight with your significant other, that's a really intense, like sharp spike in stress. But we wonder why there's this chronic, everyone's overstressed, right? Well, we're all inside, we're all under blue light. So that's just an added stressor to what we're already dealing with everything else.
Yeah. Also, things kind of maybe avoid exercise too late, because then that's just going to increase our body temperature. So,
I mean, increasing body temperature, but also that physical activity is kind of the stimulant, if you will. So it's going to wake us up.
correct.
So we would want to time that appropriately. I mean, if you really want to hit the proper windows, that 2 to 4 o'clock range, depending on time of year, is probably kind of that optimal. There's also, if you were going to do it first thing in the morning, that would also be another time. But yeah, you probably wouldn't want to exercise within 3 to 4 hours of going to bed.
And then also, last thing you can avoid before in this kind of pre-sleep phase would be large meals.
Right. So again, your body can't digest food and create the process of winding down at the same time. So we have, so for our circadian kind of rhythm, we have light is the strongest stimulus to setting our clock, but temperature is a regulator, but food is also a regulator. So whenever we get that bolus of food in our stomach, that's again going to wake us up. It's going to alert us. Yes, certain foods might make us a little tired. That's separate, but the stimulus of eating is again going to be more of a waking.
Yeah, I mean, whenever you break down food, you're releasing energy and you're releasing heat in the process.
Right, and the other thing that we didn't quite is caffeine. So the half-life of caffeine is kind of that 5 to 6 hours. So you wouldn't want to finish your dinner and then have a double shot of espresso to finish off the meal.
And yeah, and then like some people will probably like, I can drink a cup of coffee and go right to sleep. But like I said, you're gonna probably push things back, and we're definitely not gonna be optimal, and it may affect your deeper sleep ranges that you're not actually quite able to get it to. So even with things that feel normal to you, it's definitely kind of going against the system.
Yeah, and I think that we've just normalized certain things, and you don't realize how much it affects you because you've just done it for so long.
Yeah, ignorance is bliss sometimes, but
but the research would clearly indicate that if we gave you 30 days of no caffeine and we measured your sleep kind of cycles and the architecture of how deep you were able to sleep, and then we gave you 30 days of caffeine, we would see clear differences in quality of sleep. Whether you could perceive it or not, again, how long have you been doing it? You just probably feel like it's normal. But on a scientific rigor basis, like we can clearly measure the difference. Whether you can feel it or not is a different story.
All right, so recapping kind of pre-sleep, kind of avoiding some blue light, TV screens, electronics, caffeine, late time exercise, and big meals.
Yeah, and I would just think that those are like the big ones. There's probably others that we left out, but I would say that those are the ones that we should be aware of.
Yeah. All right, so now kind of entering this whole sleep phase. So for those who don't know, we have kind of 4 different phases of sleep cycle. You get
Mhm.
like stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, and then probably what most people have heard of is REM sleep.
Yeah, in the REM sleep, we kind of have multiple phases of REM sleep. So we kind of go through
Yeah, so
this.
it's like a 90-minute sleep cycles, and then uh, usually your first REM cycle is going to be the shortest, and then it usually gets longer each time.
Right. Yeah. So, we think of REM as like where dreams typically occur. Um, and so, like, if you were doing a sleep study and we knew that you were in REM sleep, and if we let you continue through it, and then you went into, say, the next phase, and then we woke you up and we asked, "Oh, what was your dream about?" You probably wouldn't remember as well as if we woke you up like right in the middle of that REM sleep. So, like, whenever you wake up, first thing in the morning, if you've kind of been in that REM stage and someone asked you, "Hey, what were you dreaming about?" Like, you probably would be able to remember it, but sometimes, like, you dreamed, but you can't really recall. It just depends on where you are when you wake up. So that's just a little tidbit.
All right, so stage 1, we got kind of like our light sleep, this kind of initial period of sleep. In this is where we kind of really start to see a bigger spike in melatonin levels.
Yeah, so this is where, so melatonin, again, this is something that we can get into a little bit more at a later time. But people think of melatonin like that's just helping us start to go to sleep. Melatonin doesn't necessarily keep us asleep. So the initial stages are just trying to kind of calm our system down, kind of to quiet the nervous system, if you will.
Yeah, and then so first phase is kind of the last uh, somewhere like that 10-15 minute range.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty short. But things we definitely want to avoid there is because it's an extremely fragile state is noises, lights, and just anything disruptions that's just going to be kind of fluctuation in that baseline.
Right. So if you're someone that falls asleep with the TV on, it's probably not a great idea. One, because of the light, like we just talked about, but two, the volume, the noise potential. Like, even though you might be groggy at this point, like, it might take you longer to truly kind of get into the next phase, if you will.
Yeah, and then with these, it's just kind of delaying and kind of pushing everything back.
Right. The other thing to kind of keep in mind would be, depending on where your bedroom is oriented, windows wise, if there's a street lamp or even the moon to a certain extent.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, blackout curtains would be something to consider, and even like smoke detectors or different light devices, like those could still have a negative impact. So just be aware of some of those things that you might not even think about.
What I know a lot of people also supplement with melatonin. Is it worth supplementing melatonin to help kind of aid this process?
In my opinion, no. There's a lot of research that would suggest there's actually more harm than good. The first thing would be, it's not regulated like you would expect. So if the pill or the bottle says it's 2 milligrams, there have been studies that have looked at, is it actually 2 milligrams, and it's widely variable as far as, like, it could be 100 or it could be basically nothing. So you don't know what you're getting. Yes, there's reputable sources, and yes, there's ways of dealing with that. But if you just went to Walgreens and just picked up a 5 or 2 milligram melatonin, um, you don't know exactly what you're getting. The other thing is, the amount of melatonin that's released is fractional compared to even a 2 milligram dose. It's way less.
Yes.
So overdosing, or not overdosing in the sense that it's going to cause harm, but megadosing in the sense that more is better isn't the case. Again, these functions are very tightly regulated, and just flooding the system with more of the molecule doesn't necessarily give you better results. there's a lot of negative ramifications that we can talk about later. But no, my personal opinion is supplementing with melatonin is not ideal.
All right. Okay, so as we kind of move past this light sleep phase into our stage 2, still still light sleep, we kind of enter this phase, which kind of makes up most of our sleep. That's stage 2, and in this is kind of where we start to really kind of not zone out, but kind of like this is where we really get a lot of sensory detachment, and we really start to kind of fall under.
Right. So as we kind of get deeper into sleep, again, that sensory detachment is kind of interesting, just because at this point, like you're not aware of kind of the outside world to a certain extent.
Yeah. Also in this phase is kind of like our this is where we get start to get some memory consolidation, but more specifically in like motor learning.
Correct. So this is actually quite important to kind of what we've been talking about. So if you're learning a new skill, and we're now going to kind of go down the physical skill route, but this could be studying for a test, or trying to memorize facts for whatever reason. So getting a good night's sleep, it's not just getting a good night's sleep, it's actually making sure that you get this stage of sleep, because this is where the brain actually takes what you learned and converts it more into that long-term retention. And so if you learned like a brand new skill in the gym, and then you stayed up all night because you had a test the next day, the next time you came to the gym, if your coach or practitioner asked you, hey, show me what we did last time, you would have a more difficult time if you didn't get a good night's sleep than if you actually went through and had a really good night's sleep.
Yeah, so and this kind of made me think about something interesting for those who are familiar with but the boxing world. Probably you could argue one of the greatest boxers of all time, Floyd Mayweather Jr. He kind of notorious had these weird training sleep schedules where he would like during camp, like he would regularly like train, eat, and then sleep, and he'd do this like several times throughout the day. I'm not sure if he was aware of the benefits that he was getting, I guess, from a motor learning standpoint, but from a skill point, a tactician as a boxer, like yeah, he's probably second to none.
Yeah, so we could argue that he was harnessing this stage because he probably wasn't sleeping long enough to truly get into some of the deeper stages.
Yes.
But if you're taking a 20-minute nap, 5 to 7 minutes could be that that stage 1. So he could be getting, say, 10 to
Yeah, I think he was pretty much just from duration alone, like probably just able to kind of get into this like stage, or not. He was probably able to get into stage 2, but probably not able to get into these like deeper sleep realms.
Right, but exactly. So he was basically acute stimulus in training, obviously fueling the training, but then going right into the recovery, if you will. And we know that sleep's the best recovery. And then in addition to recovering, it's harnessing that neural pathway that he just was honing in the gym, or whatever skill that he was learning as far as like boxing that goes.
So yeah, also in this phase, we're getting kind of synaptic pruning, and kind of more detoxing and kind of clearing out of systems. Also start to see an increase in HGH, human growth hormone.
Yeah, so the synaptic pruning. So whenever, this is again an aside, but whenever we're babies, we have all of these connections that have to be made. But then as we start to do more kind of specific movements, we kind of have to refine that. So this is part of the like refinement process. So we kind of get good at what we do the most, right? And so this is part of that process of honing the neurological connections that we've made in the previous, awake cycle.
Yeah, it's almost kind of like in trying to go like on like a road map instead of going to like these multiple different destinations and stops and leading you in one direction. It's like we're basically streamlining and making a more efficient straight line process to
Exactly. So, there could be 90 different ways to get to the same route. We're basically eliminating the more inefficient routes, making it a more direct route to what we need.
yeah. Things to avoid. Uh, Once again, still we're in this light phase of sleep, so big fluctuations in noise will disrupt this, kind of push us back, maybe even kick us out of it, but definitely delay us from getting into those deeper sleeps.
Yeah, I mean, so a lot of times people will use alcohol as a way to relax and kind of calm the system a bit. Alcohol is a depressant, but there's a difference between rest and basically sedation. And really, what alcohol gives us, similar to even sleeping pills, it's more sedation. So you feel tired, you feel groggy, but you're not really going through the normal stages of sleep. So you might lay on the couch or you might lay in bed, but you're not going through the cycle the way that you would if you were getting a normal good night's sleep. So alcohol is definitely, while you might be knocked out or asleep, you're not getting that restorative benefit that we all want from sleep.
Yeah. Uh, yeah, and then I think also we in this phase is kind of like we're kind of getting more. I guess in these lighter phases of sleep, it's kind of we'll say it's more for the body. We could maybe kind of broad spectrum it.
Yeah,
More,
we can separate them to where kind of body recovery versus brain recovery.
yeah.
So
So as we start to get into these deeper sleeps, when this is where we start to see more, a lot more benefits as far as like brain recovery and all that. So as we start to leave stage 2 and start to enter this deep sleep, we enter stage 3, and this is where we kind of really start to see the major benefits of sleep.
right, so this is like the most restorative. So yeah, that's definitely what we're trying to achieve in stage 3 for sure.
So yeah, we get we get a lot. This is we start to get a lot more tissue repair, muscle repair. This is where a lot of our immune activation begins. We see bigger increases in HGH. And this is kind of really start to see lymphatic clearing. So it's kind of like the lymphatic system for our body, but this is more specifically for the brain.
Right, so the CSF, or the cerebrospinal fluid, is kind of separate from like the rest of the blood of the body, but it's like a filtered blood, if you will. And so that has its own cycle and its own system that kind of flushes the brain, if you will. And so we need that to kind of bathe the brain to be able to kind of clear some of these again, almost like exhaust from the day of thinking and using the brain, that sort of thing.
Yeah, and this is kind of where this lymphatic clearing is kind of where we start to see that adenosine that we kind of that sleep pressure we had built up, and where it was binding. This is where we kind of start to see all that kind of clearing out. Interesting enough, it's like the brain actually shrinks, so the space in our head essentially has a little bit more room for the kind of like this flushing and washing out and clearing of the system.
Yeah, so interestingly enough, so for joints, we need workspace, right? So we need space to be able to move.
Yes.
Same thing for the brain. So like we need those channels or the system to be able to have room to move the fluid, right? Same thing with the joint. just because we have space, we need the fluid of the joint to be able to kind of move. Same thing with the brain.
Yeah. And this is where we're going to see more memory consolidation as far as facts and basically events that happen in our day-to-day lives.
Right. So that kind of, again, goes back to what we were talking about earlier, where we take that short-term kind of retention and we start to convert that into more long-term consolidation so that we can be able to recall that at a later date.
Yep. And so this is kind of reiterate. This kind of we see the biggest peaks in our HGH, and then we start to see an increase in testosterone levels for the first time.
Right. So testosterone, even though we think of it being something that is activated after, say, a workout, this is actually when we see the benefits. Testosterone is used for that kind of recovery portion.
Yeah. So testosterone, it's kind of the way to look at it is it's kind of more of like a repair. It's building. It's anabolic, and this is where we also see cortisol kind of at its lowest levels. And cortisol, as we know, is what we mentioned before, is more catabolic. It's breaking down.
Right. So you can kind of it's like a yin and yang, where when one's high, the other's going to be a little bit lower. Interestingly enough, like baseball players, any athlete, honestly, it's like, why do they take steroids? It's the recovery portion. It's not necessarily.
Yeah, you still got to put in the work.
You still got to put in the work. Yeah.
Also, then we kind of start to see a little bit of like prolactin. Most people think this is kind of like has to do, I guess, lactation and making milk production, but it also kind of provides this kind of calming sensation.
And we see some immune function as well. Like it's again, we don't think about the immune system being active if we're not sick, but it's constantly like fighting things off and maintaining our health. So stress decreases immune function. So if we can kind of counteract some of the stress from the day, we can kind of balance out. And if you've got a healthy immune system, you're going to kind of stave off that sickness as best as possible.
Yeah. Things to kind of avoid. So we mentioned before, alcohol. It may be good for that kind of pre-sleep, if you can say anything, because it's going to have a sedative effect. It's going to maybe kind of help us, but it's going to prevent us from entering these deeper phases of sleep where we're getting a lot of that recovery benefit.
Yeah, I mean, there's arguments to be had. I mean, you can find evidence on both sides, but really, alcohol is not beneficial. So minimizing it to the best of your ability would really be optimal.
Yeah, and then also any like kind of fluctuations in light. So even like a little bit of light is going to have an effect on our system as well.
Yeah, I mean, the brain or the eye can pick up a candle at over a mile away. So like even if you're not attending to it, the brain is still dealing with it. So it's one of those things that any spike in light is going to be a negative effect.
Yeah, anything else on stage 3?
I mean, I think that, there's clearly other disruptors. I think we'll maybe talk about this at a different time, but there's obviously sleep apnea, restless leg, those types of things, and those are a little bit more complicated, so we won't talk about that at this point.
All right, so we leave stage 3 and continuing on kind of in the deep sleep phase. We have REM sleep. So random eye movement is what REM is actually standing for. But this is going to be kind of more. You can think of this case as kind of more of like for like emotional health.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's whole research fields and in clinical practices that take advantage of this, that help with like emotional trauma and different things. So it's very powerful. We don't think about it all the time, but yeah, there's there's definitely a lot of benefits to making sure that you actually get to this stage.
Yeah, interesting. It's kind of so as we're going through our sleep cycles, we actually kind of start to see this uh, basically decrease in the frequency of like our brain waves. So it actually kind of is getting a little bit slower and slower. But now in random eye movement, because we have basically this is where we dream. It's like we actually get this influx of brain activity.
Yeah, so this is where, interestingly enough, like, so if you've ever seen a video, like the eyes actually are darting back and forth, even though they're closed, but we're pretty much paralyzed at this point. So like the body is perfectly still, but the eyes are and the brain is increasing activity.
Yeah. All right. During these phases, we're seeing uh, basically increases like in acetylcholine, dopamine, but I think this is kind of where it's kind of this is what's contributing to uh, these kind of heightened brain activity. It's don't you can think of dopamine kind of like our uh, mobilizer, and it's like it's kind of encouraging us to do things, and as we're dreaming, and like I said, we mentioned before, as we get into we go in these sleep cycles. We go through multiple like sleep cycles throughout the night, and as we get later in, as we've been to sleep longer, we're in REM longer. So we're going to see these eventually start to see us coming out of that sleep cycle and start to prep our body for kind of waking up again. So we're getting more heightened brain activity. We start to see more dopamine increase, acetylcholine, these neurotransmitters that's going to kind of get us going.
Right. Yeah. So I don't think we mentioned this earlier, but temperature. I mean, I know we mentioned temperature, but like having a cool room matters, right? Um, so we will see the temperature minimum approximately 2 hours before we wake up. And so as the temperature starts to rise, that is also kind of another factor in what wakes us up.
Yeah. Um, yeah. So also kind of starting to leave that REM cycle, we start to then see as we're starting to wake up, we start to see a little bit of cortisol levels rise, and this is actually kind of where even though cortisol starting to rise, but this is kind of like our peak of where our highest levels of testosterone are going to be.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then in do so, melatonin is going to start to drop off, and it's going to slowly kind of bring us out of this sleep phase.
Right. So yeah, that melatonin again and cortisol are almost inversely related. So as one goes up, the other is going to kind of fall.
Yeah. Things that are going to be big disruptors as far as REM sleep.
I mean, there's a lot. I mean, everything that we talked about previously basically applies, because a lot of times, you take a sleeping pill, alcohol, all of these things. You might stay in stage 1, stage 2, but you never really get to 3. You never even get to 4. So again, you might be asleep, but if we look, you never even got to stage 4. So all of those disruptors basically prevent you from getting into those deeper levels of sleep.
Yes. So yeah, and it's all these disruptors we kind of mentioned before, just kind of maybe delaying things. So just preventing us getting into this essentially deeper sleep where we're getting the vast majority uh, of the recovery process.
Yeah, so just imagine if your clock was 2 hours behind. So you're in Boston, but your body says it's in a different time zone. Um, all of the hormones are now going to be happening at the wrong time, and so the hormone spikes that you need to get into some of these deeper levels haven't happened yet because everything's been delayed. So the timing really is how you get into all these things and all these disruptors. If we really want to kind of get to the crux of it, they're all timing disruptors. So they're stealing time from you, which steals recovery. Like so it's this kind of cascade of events. But really, the timing mechanism is where this all kind of stems from.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think kind of gone through kind of like the sleep cycles and kind of things we're kind of looking for in each cycle, and I think we give a pretty good outline of how it works. And like I said, we kind of go in these 90-minute wave cycles, so we're kind of moving in and out of these. Anything else?
No, I think we've covered all of our.
Yeah. So next time we're going to go into a lot more depth as far as like kind of the actual like hormones themselves and more factors kind of contributing it, and then also kind of like why we sleep and other like schools of thought of like the pros and cons and benefits to everything.
Yeah, we're gonna kind of take it from a multi-perspective view of, because we think of sleep as just sleep, but there's different reasons for why we sleep. So we're going to kind of touch upon a couple of different perspectives, just to kind of create a nice, well-rounded point of view.
Yeah. All right, recap. So we got 4 different phases of sleep. We got those light phases of sleep, which is going to be really kind of think maybe more recovery for the body a little bit. We get a little bit of tissue repair. We got that motor learning. But then those later stages, stage 3 and stage 4, those deeper phases of sleep is where we can get most of that brain cognitive benefits, clearing out of things, and emotional regulation.
Mm-hmm.
Things that we're just, we're going to have, I would say maybe like, like more feeling based, and make us, kind of like enjoy the day better.
Yep. So sleep debt is real. It's like carrying around a backpack full of bricks. So it's really difficult to make up lost sleep. So making sure each night is as quality as possible is of the utmost importance.
Yeah. All right. Stay tuned for next time.
And we'll see you again soon.
All right. Take care.